All right, let's dive right into this explainer. So today we're going to look at something you probably think you know inside and out, a classic bedtime fable. But we're going to break it down and use some interactive visual analysis to uncover a hidden masterclass in risk management, power dynamics, and asymmetric problem solving. We are analyzing this narrative not as a simple children's story, but as a hardcore strategic case study. Now take this famous moral. You've definitely heard it before, right? We usually treat no act of kindness is ever wasted as this warm, fuzzy sentiment. It's the kind of thing you see embroidered on a throw pillow or printed on a greeting card. But if you actually look at it through the lens of strategy, this quote presents a really powerful hypothesis about long-term investments and relationship building. We're going to explore this exact question today by putting this timeless story under an analytical microscope. We really want to find out if showing mercy and kindness is merely a luxury for those in power, or if it's actually a calculated, absolutely necessary tactic for surviving in an unpredictable environment.
Section 1, an unlikely forest encounter.
Okay, picture the scene for a second. It's a bright morning in a vibrant green forest. The tall trees are swaying gently, birds are singing, butterflies are doing their thing among the flowers. And there's a massive lion lying under a large tree, sleeping completely peacefully after a massive hunt. Right nearby, totally oblivious to the danger, a tiny mouse pops out of its hole, just happily looking for some food. On the surface, these two exist in completely different worlds, separated by a massive, literal gap in the food chain. Let's actually pause for a second and map out the narrative timeline we're tracking here. Notice how fast this escalates. We go from a totally peaceful forest encounter on the morning of day 1 to a literal life and death moment by midday to a total reversal of power dynamics by day 5. It just shows you how incredibly fast a stable environment can transform into a high-stakes crisis, one that requires resources you didn't even know you'd need just a few days earlier. Let's freeze the frame again. Check out this psychological trait table. Think of it like a radar chart, highlighting the extreme asymmetry between our two characters. The lion is operating with off-the-charts physical strength and a naturally massive ego, but his initial empathy and patience, yeah, they're sitting pretty low. Now look at the mouse, the exact inverse. Incredibly low physical strength, but highly patient and deeply grateful. And it's exactly this psychological mismatch that sets the stage for everything that follows. Section 2. The anatomy of mercy. So driven by pure curiosity, the tiny mouse starts treating the sleeping lion like a literal playground. Thinking this massive beast isn't going to wake up, the mouse is running over his huge paws, climbing onto his back, jumping across his thick mane. I mean, talk about a terrible risk assessment. And suddenly, boom, the lion opens his eyes. With one lightning-fast movement, the tiny mouse is instantly pinned beneath a giant paw. He is facing absolute certain death. The lion could literally end it in a single bite. The terrified mouse folds its tiny paws and is just begging the king lion for its life. And it offers what, to the lion at least, sounds like a completely laughable proposition. The mouse pleads, "If you let me go today, maybe one day I can help you too." Now, from a purely logical standpoint, based on raw physical strength, this is an absurd claim. I mean, how could a creature that small possibly assist the apex predator of the entire forest? This is where it gets really fascinating. Let's look at the lion's options through this decision tree matrix. The lion literally bursts into laughter at the very idea of this tiny mouse helping him. But hey, he happens to be in a good mood, so he chooses the path of mercy. He lifts his paw and lets the mouse scurry safely back into the forest. For the lion, the immediate benefit of eating the mouse is negligible. It's barely a snack. But by choosing mercy out of sheer amusement, he unknowingly secures the ultimate, life-saving return on investment. The lion's initial laughter and his dismissal of the mouse stems from a failure to understand this exact, critical concept, asymmetric problem solving. The lion just naturally assumes that because he's a giant, only another giant could ever possibly be of use to him. He completely fails to recognize that sometimes massive conventional obstacles can't be overcome by conventional strength. They can only be beaten by completely different, small-scale capabilities. Section 3. Trapped. The turning point. Fast forward to the afternoon of day 5. Human hunters enter the forest and rig up a strong rope net between the trees. A bit later, the lion is just carelessly strolling through the area, completely oblivious to the danger. And then, snap! A heavy rope net falls. The mighty king of the forest is completely immobilized, caught entirely off guard by an adversary using tools rather than raw physical power. Take a look at that number on the screen. 0. That number represents exactly how much progress the lion's immense physical strength is making against those hunters' ropes. In a split second, his primary asset, his brute strength, has instantly become completely useless. Honestly, it's worse than useless. As the source material tells us, no matter how hard he pulls and thrashes, the ropes just become tighter. His own brute force is literally being weaponized against him. In an absolute panic, realizing that his physical superiority has been entirely neutralized by some simple woven rope, the mighty lion has no choice but to roar loudly for help, just echoing his desperation across the whole forest.
Section 4, Tiny Hero, Giant Solution.
Pausing the narrative one more time, this problem-solution matrix breaks down exactly why the mouse succeeds where the lion totally failed. The lion applies frantic pulling and roaring, which, as we saw, yields negative results. The mouse applies a systematic approach, patiently chewing the ropes. The very smallness of the mouse, the exact thing the lion mocked, is the precise biological tool required to dismantle the trap. Brute force fails, precision and patience succeed.
Here's exactly how the rescue operation goes down. Hearing the roar, the mouse immediately sprints toward the sound. Crucially, it remembers the lion's past kindness, so there's zero hesitation. It gets straight to work, using those sharp teeth to patiently chew. One rope breaks, then another, and another, until finally, the massive net just falls apart and the beast is free. The lion is just overwhelmed with profound gratitude. He thanks the little mouse, openly admitting, "You were right." He realizes that his earlier mockery was incredibly short-sighted. The mouse smiles proudly, and the two walk away as lifelong friends. The lion learned the absolute hard way that value and capability are not strictly tied to size and conventional power. Section 5. Modern Lessons in Kindness. Now, let's translate this ancient forest strategy right into our modern lives. Because honestly, asymmetric problem solving happens all the time in the real world. Think about it, a junior employee catching a PR disaster that the entire executive team somehow missed, or an intern spotting a critical code flaw right before a multi-million-dollar software launch, or maybe it's just a small favor you do for a stranger that unexpectedly yields career-saving help a decade later. In business and in life, the most critical help often comes from the lowest rungs of the ladder, from the exact people whose power you might initially overlook. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder when it comes to the networks and the relationships you're building every single day. Are you evaluating people purely on their current, conventional size and power? Or are you investing in the asymmetric potential of kindness? Think about it. Who is the mouse in your life that you've been underestimating? And more importantly, when the net inevitably falls, will they be there to chew the ropes for you?